Gulcin Gilbert joins me on Air Sports News. I've not seen you for, I think it's 5 years. We were at Paris.
Yes, we were. I believe we were jumping for a good friend's memorial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did
Right.
we jump together? Me, you, Rich Grimm.
Yes, we did. Yes, yeah. I was in the bright yellow jumpsuit.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
You were in a bright yellow jumpsuit, and we were on top of Jan. His husband, his wife had brought his yellow Corvette. So we have this very cool picture of all of us in yellow.
Yes, yeah, I remember that day fantastically. So, what a week it's been for you. Retirement. Tell me all about it.
Yes, it's something that's a bit foreign to me. I think in other families, you grow up and one or another of your parents or both might retire from something. My father's an artist, so if anything, he's gotten better. He's 92 and he's just done 160 drawings and is getting ready for a show.
Wow.
So the word retirement is rather foreign in my world. It's something that I'm still in denial. I'm in total denial about. I'm just on vacation right now. And in terms of flying, I haven't retired from flying. I've just retired from a major airline.
Yes. And 23 years, 22 years?
A little over 23 years, yes.
You can tell us the airline if you want, it's not a problem.
Yes, I was with American Airlines for 23 years. And before that, I was with Northrop Grumman as a corporate and a test pilot. And before that, I owned 2 flight schools. And before that, I flew jumpers. So that's basically the scope of my flying career.
That's incredible. That is a lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on, Gulcin. You started flying jumpers. Was that your first, once you got your license, was that what you did first of all?
Yes. You only need a commercial license to fly skydivers. You don't even need an instrument license. Yeah. You're limited to staying within 50 miles of your home airport for hire. And you're limited to things like flying banners or skydivers. And then once you get your instrument license, then you can also get your certified flight instructor license, which I was working on progressively as I was flying skydivers. I flew skydivers for a year at Lake Elsinore.
What aircraft?
I started out in a Cessna 182, and it was an old one. And the drop zone owner at the time recommended that I stay within gliding distance of the airport at all times, which I did. There was one little mishap. I had some carburetor icing and my engine quit for a couple of minutes. And I turned around and I said, okay, everybody out. I got to deal with this. And luckily you can do that to skydivers. You can't do that to regular paying customers.
Were you already?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Yes, I was. Yes.
Yes.
And yes, I actually made my first in 1976. I got my license I started flying in 1976 too, got my license in 77. I was a private pilot for 10 years and I started flying skydivers in 1987.
These dates don't seem to add up with the person I'm looking at. This is incredible.
It's this magic cream. If you send me $1 million, I'll share. Excuse me, I'll share. No, I take after my dad. He's 92 and he doesn't have a wrinkle in his face.
Yeah. So 1976, you started flying and jumping.
Yes.
In 76, I was 9. I was born in 67. So we're going a long way back.
Just a little bit before you.
Yeah. Static line rounds, of course.
Say again?
Static line rounds back in...
Oh, of course. I have 100 round jumps. Yeah, I started out with French paramilitary boots and a Bell helmet and one of those B-12 containers and a front mounted reserve.
Yeah.
It was scary. Those were scary times because we had those shot and a halves that you had to try desperately to pull them both if you had a malfunction to release your main, the malfunction before you tossed. You had to physically pull the wrist cord and then unpack the the reserve and toss it out. But I was always just so concerned that I wouldn't pull them at the same time if I had a malfunction. And if you didn't, then you'd pull one and then the other one would be super hard to pull because you've got all this material up there flapping about.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I started as well. The Cape Wells and the round reserve and the round main canopy. This was 1990. They were still teaching us on those things in 1990 in the UK.
Wow.
It sounds incredible, doesn't it? So what a career you have had with flying. You've put a lot of effort and time with mentoring people coming into flying. Tell me a bit about that.
Yes. Well, as you just mentioned, we both came up in the sport, and I also came up in aviation, spanning a time period that really allowed us to see the history of the sport and of skydiving, because like I went from shot and a halves to tape wells to blast handles to finally the 3-ring circus and so many other bits and parts of the gear that changed until we pretty much have a solid, there's tweaks and stuff happening, but not the kind of huge innovations. So we grew up with the history of the sport. I also grew up with the history of aviation. I started flying. My first type rating was in a DC-3, and it was mostly because I really wanted to do that. But so I encompass the radial engines through piston engines, through turboprops, through turbojet engines, and of course all the developments to from steam gauges to the kind of LCD screens that we have today. And I think I have a lot to offer in terms of experience, also quite a bit of breakthrough of glass ceiling, if you will. For many years, I was the only woman wherever it was I was flying. And I think, we just owe it to the next generation to impart our experience and advice and encouragement. So I've mentored women and men throughout my career. There are a lot of opportunities right now in aviation, even though COVID has put a little bit of a stall on the hiring process for about 1.5 years. All the majors are hiring, which means that they're pulling people from the regionals and the military, which means there's slots available in the regionals and all the way down. So this is an outstanding time to get involved in aviation if you'd like to make it a career, whether you end up in the airlines or in the corporate world or fighting fires, wherever your passion takes you, there is opportunity available.
What kind of changes have you seen for women coming into being pilots and captains? You've seen it all, of course. Where do you think it is now? Have we reached a stage where we have equal opportunity in the aircraft or not?
We definitely have equal opportunity, especially in the regionals and the airlines. I haven't been a part of corporate flying for many years, but one of the reasons I went to the airlines were I felt my career opportunities in corporate flying were a bit limited. They were remiss and reluctant to have 2 women in the cockpit at the same time at one of the companies that I worked for. So that meant that the 2 women that were there, that we were both flying first officer, would never have a chance to upgrade to captain. So that's the sort of thing that is old school and doesn't happen anymore. So there is equal opportunity. Unfortunately, in America, in the United States, we still have less than 5% women represented at the airlines. And I'm one of currently 147 captains. And since I retired a couple of days ago, there's now 146 out of 15,000 pilots. So we're still unicorns.
Yeah, that seems incredible. It seems almost impossible, but that's the way it is. But you've come up through so many years and seen so many developments. Do you feel quite, I don't know, do you feel proud of what you've achieved for women in aviation?
I do feel like I'm a representative. We all are. which is, again, why I speak at schools and I mentor young women that are interested in flying. We have a cadet program at American Airlines, and they encourage us to take on a mentorship position with some of the new cadets there. I worked with our union to mentor new pilots and furloughed pilots, which were furloughed for a while. But basically, we had a support group for new pilots, and that's really important when you're first starting out.
What did you finish off on? What type? Was it 777? Oh.
My last job as a first officer was on the 777 for 6 years. Yeah. And then I upgraded on the Airbus 320 family. So we flew the 319, 320, 321, 321 Neo.
So much to ask you. I'm such an aviation geek. I was such a plane spotter as a child. All the different plane types you've been throughout your career. It's an incredible amount and different styles and different ways of flying the aeroplane. Just tell me a bit about the progress, what you've seen.
Well, when I first started at American, I was a flight engineer on the 727. So I sat side saddle on a panel, yeah. And it was a plane that was built in the 60s. So we had steam gauges. There was no, we call it the magenta line. There was no GPS. We worked on VOR Airways, which is equipment that's on the ground that helps us navigate. On the engineers panel, I had to sync our electrical buses and wait for blinking lights to all blink in unison and throw a bar to close the bus, and move handles and valves for hydraulics, and move switches to make the bleed air go to different places to run different accessories. And what was really wonderful about that is it was a great education for the systems of an airliner. So I'm lucky to have had that kind of education. Today, the airplane is, you usually sit in front of either one or two main screens that are your attitude indicator and your navigational display. And then you have a couple of screens for your engine instruments and the various different systems on the airplane. And if something goes wrong, you'll get a caution warning light and what we call an ECAM memo that tells you what's gone wrong, and it tells you what it's done to fix it and if you need to do anything else to fix it. So not a huge amount of systems knowledge is required, not as much as it used to be. Of course, you still have to understand your systems, but the airplane does so much more for you now than it did before. Hence, we no longer have a flight engineer. That is an archaic position, as is the navigator position. So there used to be 4 pilots or 4 crew members flying a plane at any one time, and more if you were flying long haul. And now, except we have, the FAA has requirements for the number of pilots that have to be available for over 8 hours and over 12 hours. So we still have to carry extra crew members for that, but everybody's a pilot.
Yeah. Which aircraft has your heart?
Oh, I love the 777.
Right.
Yes. Now that's just an amazing bird. Even on my last flight, I was still just in awe of how large it was. I could barely see the end of the airplane from the flight deck. It was so long, and doing a walk around on that was like doing your exercise because it had such a large footprint on the ramp, giant engines, and 98,000 horsepower aside on the 200. And it went long haul. It went to some of my favorite destinations, and I went all over the world with it. So I really enjoyed. Boeings are pilot airplanes, and Airbus is a great airplane, but I grew up with Boeings. So yeah. I always felt very comfortable on that plane.
So let's just cross over a little bit with your life as a skydiver and your life as a pilot and talk a little bit about the jet at Paris. Is it a DC-9?
Yes.
Are you going to be flying that at some point, do you think?
Well, they've asked me, the only issue and I've spoken to them is they're probably, it would be more suited to someone who already has a type reading in the DC-9. I don't. Like I said, all of my type readings were Boeing except for the DC-3 and the Airbus. And they don't fly it that often. So is it going to be worth it for them to type me in it? I don't know. I might fly first officer on it or something like that. I have like 3 jumps out of it. It's great fun.
Is it operational at the moment? Is it actually working?
I'm not sure.
Right, incredible. And your skydiving, you've been involved in so many things. Some big charity skydives, which probably some people watching who are not familiar with jumping out of planes or maybe looking from other air sports. Tell me a bit about some of the jump for the cause and these type of things you've done.
Well, Kate Cooper and Mallory Charcher were the organizers, or the main thrust behind Jump for the Cause. There were many other organizers as well, and Paris Valley always sponsored them, or Skydive Paris. It was a wonderful concept, and it benefited breast cancer, which Mallory's mother had died as a kind of a consequence of. And there were, I think, 5 of them, and I was just involved in the last 2. But after the second to the last one, when it was announced they were going to do another one in 2009, I just said, somebody's got to do a documentary about it. And I did. It's kind of a long story, but long story short, I made an 82-minute documentary of it called Pink Skies. And I'm very proud of it because it documented the engineering and all the effort that goes into making a world record. And we made a 181-way woman's world record, which still stands today. So I'm very proud of that. But I also documented breast cancer. What is it? What causes it? What can we do to prevent it? And married that in. And that's kind of a difficult marriage, but I think we did a fairly good job of marrying the 2. And we got a lot of awards for best documentary and best score and best director. And I wrote, produced, and directed. And I had one other main team member who did all the editing and the score, and was the director of photography. But we also had, his name was Zach Hylison. And then we also had this incredible amount of footage from 8 of the world's top skydiving aerial cinematographers. And I'm not sure if it was 8 or 10, but we had a lot of extra footage of the jump from every different angle. So it was an editor's dream because we had all these different angles. So that was very cool. And that record still stands. And then I was on World Team for about 15 years. And World Team started doing record jumps in Slovenia, Bratislava, and then Anapa, Russia. And then we went to Thailand. And I was there for the mass jump in '98, where we jumped, I think, about 500 people over Sunam Luang Park in Bangkok. And then in '04, we did the 357-way world record. And then finally in '06, we did the 400-way, which still stands as the largest big way skydive formation ever achieved. And it was a remarkable feat, and so proud to have been a part of World Team.
This documentary, though, tell me a little bit how you got involved in that. You wrote and directed it. Have you got history with production of documentary? Or
yes, I have a bachelor's from UCLA in filmmaking and theater.
Right.
So I've had some experience mostly with short film and stage. I'd never done a full-length documentary, so that was quite an undertaking.
Yeah, that's incredible. It really is quite an achievement indeed. So what's going to be happening in the foreseeable future? What can you see coming up next?
Well, like I said, I'm going to continue flying, most likely corporate of some kind. Yeah. And I've been writing short stories since the beginning of COVID that are basically creating an anthology of some of my skydiving and aviation adventures. So I've got a book coming. There's a book being launched at the end of October of women in aviation poetry, kind of a haiku of women in aviation poetry. And I've got a piece in there called Ode to the 777. So that will be coming out. And then I'm also have 3 or 4 stories coming out in a nature anthology. And then the one I'm working on, that'll be a collection of short stories of my adventures in the aviation world.
Amazing. You've got so much going on. The retirement from the airline, was that something you decided you were going to do now, or how did this date come about for you?
No, I was forced out. I'm that old, Reagan.
Yeah. No.
You can't fly for the airlines after you reach a certain age. But see, if I tell you what that is, then you'll know how old I am.
No.
Of course, it's well publicized.
49, isn't it? 49, I think it is.
Right, exactly. 49.
Yeah. So do you get to keep the uniform?
Yes, we do. It's a bit of a responsibility, and we, even after I retire, I still have to represent the airline when I wear it, and I have to get permission. We wear it for memorials and for certain functions.
Yes. You have to get permission to wear it now for this chat with me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Will you do school visits, this type of thing? Is that something?
Oh, absolutely. And that's another time where we wear the uniform, to let young people know what the uniform looks like. And so we present a more professional and polished look when we go and we talk about aviation, of course.
It's still, even after all these decades, the airline captain uniform still carries certain panache, a certain weight, a certain style to it, doesn't it? It really, I think above many other things that you could be recognized as, an airline captain, for me, it's just, wow, look at this person walking through the airport right now.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that some people still think that. It doesn't seem to carry as much weight as it used to. Sometimes people don't recognize the uniform or the number of stripes. And I don't know if that's a matter of education or what, but yeah, I'm glad to hear you still respect the uniform.
I do. And have you got complimentary flights for life now, or does it not work that way?
It does. They're standby, and there's a kind of a hierarchy of how people get on, and the airlines, since they becoming more solvent, have figured out ways to fill the airplanes a little bit more than they used to. So sometimes one has to wait 1 or 2 or 3 flights to be able to get on. So patience is involved. But yes, we do get that, continue to have that privilege.
And with jumping, what's your plans?
I haven't jumped since COVID, and I also wanted to really focus on my last year at American, so and enjoy it. So I've been pretty much flying in airplanes in the last year. So I need to dust off my equipment and get it repacked, and I'll be out there.
Yeah. And your retirement, just tell me a little bit about the whole situation with your flight and how the procedure and the whole day went. And
well, we do pick a last flight, and I bid for Los Angeles to JFK and then back. And that was actually pretty smart because I wanted to have the water cannon salute, which is a traditional salute upon retirement. But because of the drought in California, they weren't doing that here. So the wonderful folks at the New York flight office arranged for it for me there. And I was coming around, we have a large taxi that goes around the perimeter of the airport, and there was some work being done where we normally would have come in. So I had to taxi around, and I had no idea exactly where it was going to be. And I turned the corner, and there were these 2 fire trucks, and I wanted to bawl like a baby. And I'm going, no, I can't. I'm still taxiing an airplane. I've got to keep it together here. So I went under it, and it was really beautiful. They just spray the airplane with a lot of water, and it's like kind of going through a car wash. Yeah. And it just was a very memorable moment, very emotional. And then I had 3 of my very best friends at the airline who all started flying at the same time I did, 3 gals. They were all still really close, and they took the time out of their day and their week, got dressed in their uniform, and met me at the gate. And I was very touched by that. And they had balloons and flowers and photographs and gluten-free donuts, and and then we were having our layover at the TWA Hotel at JFK, which is a marvelous hotel that if you have any feelings of nostalgia for aviation, it's a must-stay hotel. And they upgraded me to a suite, and we had a little bit of a room get together. It was lovely. It was a lovely way to mark the retirement.
Well, on that note, I think it's a great opportunity to say thank you and congratulations on such an amazing flying career, Gulcin. And I'm sure I'll see you in the air or in a wind tunnel at some drop zone.
Absolutely. Can't wait to jump with you again.
Me too. Yeah. It's a real pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Really enjoyed the chat. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.